good friend of mine named Dante from Old Guys in a Garage asked if I could make a custom Katana sword holder that would hold some of his collection. Apparently he has a big collection, never seen it, but he said he wanted it to hold 7 swords, so I'm assuming it's a big collection. If you're not sure who Old Guys in a Garage is, it's a fun channel. They also stream on Twitch. They have a Facebook page. I'll link everything in the description, but ultimately it's a couple guys around my age that are literally in a garage, like me, and they play all kinds of video games, from like the retro Atari all the way up to modern day games with a lot of fun commentary. So feel free to check them out. Like I said, I'll link them in the description. Of course, I said, hell yeah, I'll make you a custom sword holder. 1, because he's a good friend of mine. And 2, I've never done anything like this before. I've never done any type of rack or holder. And those are the projects I like to do. Something that's new, challenging, get creative with it. I hate making the same stuff over and over and over. Alright, let's get to the project. Don't forget, if you like it, hit the like button, subscribe, ring that bell if you want notifications on new videos. I highly appreciate it. Let's see what I did. I never made one of these things before. So I didn't know anything about a sword holder, let alone a sword. Don't have any swords, but I'm going to have to figure that out. Of course, my first step, as any person would do, is go to Google. Googled sword racks. Don't get a whole lot of information, but I was able to get some general ideas and general dimensions, which was important because I don't have a sword, and the sword's going to have to fit in this, which we haven't tried yet. I had to make sure that it was all going to fit when it's all complete. I also asked Dante if he wanted any customization, like maybe some Japanese artwork or something more to it that would make it a little more custom. Turns out he did want some custom artwork, gave me some options. I figured I'd probably end up doing it by wood burner. If you haven't checked out my Facebook page, I'll link it in the description. I actually do it in every video, but I do a lot of pyrography and wood burning. Feel free to check it out. As a matter of fact, that was one of my latest wood burnings. Did the jackal. I'm going to do a video on how I do the frame and all that for it. Haven't got to it yet. But you can check out my page, and I post a lot more stuff on there that you don't see on YouTube. As for the lumber, we decided to do it out of premium pine. He wanted a lighter look. So the next step is I went to the big box store and tried to pick out the best boards I could. You know how that goes with the big box store. This also was not my last trip to the big box store. Hint, hint. Now you may have noticed on a sword rack, gun rack, any type of rack, the sides are kind of curvy and wavy. And I wanted this one to have a little bit of extra curves because it is a Japanese custom sword holder, so I think some curves are nice, right guys? Now this sword holder was going to hold 7 swords. So my only thought on how to do this, because each side has to be mirror image of each other and they have to all be the same. So of course, what we do as woodworkers is I made some templates to use. I figure as far as the sides go, I could use my template, cut out that one board, sand it, get it all where I wanted it, and then use it as the template for the other side. That way they're mirror image, or as close as possible. In order to make my templates, I took some 1/4-inch plywood, nothing special. I drew out my design on graph paper, just plain old graph paper. I super glued them, or spray, I used some spray adhesive, put it on the 1/4-inch plywood, and then I cut these out using my jigsaw. Next step, I knew an approximate length that it was going to be, so I just cut the board at a generic 45 inches long, and from there I could take my holder template, start at the bottom, and just start moving it up. I purposely made the template top and bottom same distance. That's a good thing about using graph paper. You can do that because the whole key is this stack on top, and that way it's going to be the same all the way up the side of it. And I did this all the way up until I had the key 7 holders. Once I had this all traced on my actual board, I went ahead and took my jigsaw and I cut it all the way around, all the way up. It was a little bit tedious, but I managed. Come on. Quick tip. I found that if I drill holes in all my sharp turning points, it's going a lot faster and a lot smoother. So if you're ever in the same situation with your jigsaw, that's a tip for you that might help. Key part is when you're cutting this up is make sure you stay a little bit on the outside of the line, because you're going to want to sand up to that line. That's going to give you the most accurate dimension to your template whenever you're all done. Now for the little inner parts, the tight curves and so forth, I ended up buying some drilled drum sanders for my actual drill. They work really well. I don't have an actual oscillating drum sander. I don't have room, but it worked well, and that's what I did to sand all these tight spots. Now for the second piece, that's going to be the mirror image of this, I was able to cut this out a lot quicker. I didn't follow the line near as close. I stayed on the outside still. That's still key. And I kept within, a 1/16 to 1/8 inch of it, but I went a lot quicker on this because I was going to end up using a flush trim bit, so it didn't really matter. Basically, my first one was going to be the pattern, and I'll flush cut trim using it as the guide. Easy peasy, right? I screwed up. I cut this all out, got to looking at it, and it didn't seem right. It didn't match the template. Here's the template. Look at that. It doesn't even come close. So I was scratching my head wondering what happened, and I threw away all the pieces that I was supposed to keep, and this was the cutout. So this was supposed to be trash. The other one was the actual piece, and that is my fault. On this next piece, it won't happen again. I'm putting X's on the waist so that I know which one to keep. I can't believe I did that. Sorry, Dante. Might be a little bit longer before you get your katana holder. My bad. After my mess up, I had to go get some more lumber. I had only this one piece left, so I needed one more piece. And I'm ready to go. So let's get this thing going. I'm ready.
Starting over again. Sucks, but I changed my plan. Instead of clamping them together and using a sander to get them exactly the same, I decided to use a flush trim bit. And it did make things a lot quicker. Using my flush trim bit, I used the first one I cut as a template.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, no, me and my family, we own a butcher shop. We're out here making online deliveries. We're trying to get some catalogs out and some information out about our
Not today, man.
Okay, brother. You have a good one.
Sorry for interrupting. You don't interrupt people when they're using power tools. I wish this was common sense, but y'all, if somebody's using power tools, stand by and wait until they're done if you really need to talk to them. I wouldn't have bought anything from this guy, even if it was everlasting life, because it kind of ticked me off the way he came up to try to sell me stuff when I'm in the middle of doing something. Anyways, let's move on.
Next step, I had to make the back supports. Now, key to this is they had to be 11.5 inches wide. That was going to be the final width of my rack that I was making. So, of course, like we talked about, I made a template. Here's the design. One thing that I screwed up on is I did not account for the total length. Make sure your template is going to be the same length as the piece you need when you flip it over. I did not account for the 3/4 inch width of this, so this is actually short, like 1.5 inches. So I had to add that on when I'm making it. Not a huge deal, but something that I can save you the trouble on. If you're going to do something similar to this, make sure you account for all the length that you need in your template. Anyways, moving on. When you use this type of template, you're just going to trace it on one side, and you can literally flip it over, do the other side, and it's like a mirror image. And that's how you get your design. Something a little bit behind this design, Dante wanted to incorporate waves. I guess waves have a specific meaning in the Japanese culture. And I kind of made these represent waves. That was my kind of, what do you call that? Anyways, that's how I incorporated the waves into this piece. And again, once you get your design onto your piece of board, I used my jigsaw. Honestly, y'all, if y'all have a scroll saw for these, it probably would have been a lot easier. They're smaller pieces, so I kept having to clamp, reclamp, and move around. But I used my jigsaw and I made do with them, and I cut them out. Now, before assembly, so I've got my side pieces cut, I got my top and I got my bottom pieces cut, sanded, they're ready to go. The next step I needed to do before I assembled this was add some key slots. Key slots is going to be how this hangs on the wall. If you are not familiar with key slots, I literally stopped in the middle of this project to make a video about key slots, just so that when I made this video, I could link it and say, hey, I made a key slot video so you can know what key slots are, because otherwise this video would have been really long if I went into depth about key slots. So you're welcome. Feel free to watch that video. I will link it in the description, and at the end of this video I will also pop it up where you can just click on it and go to it. Assembly time. Once I had all my pieces all cut and ready to go, I had one more step that I had to do to them. I had to cut out the groove that the back piece fit in. Let me show you right there, like that. So I had to cut that out. That was going to be the next step. Once I got this cut out, for the glue up, I use Titebond 2. Don't get stuck up on what kind of glue you got to use for this type of project. You could use Elmer's glue, and I bet it would hold just as well as long as you have a good tight fit up. Now, this fit up was tricky. For the main reason, the clamping was hard because of all these beautiful curves. So there was no flat spot to really put a clamp and clamp it in all different directions. So I had to get creative on this one. First thing I did is I decided to clamp up the top. I did that because I could put it at the edge of my table, get it all situated, make sure it was all square, add the glue, clamp it all up, let that dry, and then once I did that, I could go down to the bottom, turn it around, use the edge of my table again, clamp it all up the way I could, or the way I did the first one, and then I had those two, the top and the bottom supports, glued and good to go. Square. Square was important. During the fit up process, I noticed there was a slight bow to the project where the middle was going to be wider than the ends. That was due to the wood, you know, good old box store, I'm sure. It was prime piece of wood. No, I'm just kidding. It was just natural bow because this is a longer project and it's thinner now. It's not as much material, so no big deal. I decided to add a center support. The center support, I did that strategically though. So a sword should place right here, more or less cover this when the sword's there. Yeah, it won't be as noticeable. Not that it really matters. I made it look nice and neat and rounded and gave it some curves as well, but it will be somewhat hidden. Now, to support this piece, glue up was okay, but I didn't feel like it would be 100%, so I decided to add some dowels. Dowels can add a lot of support, so once I took off all my clamps, I started measuring out and marking where my dowels would go. I decided with 3/8 dowels. I drilled my holes, filled the holes with Titebond 2 wood glue, applied my dowels, and of course, once I applied them in there, if they're a tight fit, you can usually just flush cut those with your flush trim saw, and it turns out great. Here, dowels. Favorite part, sanding and finishing. I'm being facetious when I say it's my favorite part as far as sanding. This was a pain in the ass. I started at 80 grit and I worked my way up to 120, and then I went ahead and took 200 and hand sanded the whole thing, got in all the curves and all that, give it a nice smooth finish. I did decide to get a little bit creative and add some burning to it. I felt like just a plain white pine was going to be a little dull, especially since I really couldn't find any way to incorporate any cool Japanese wood burning art. What I was able to do is put Dante's name in Japanese, which he gave me. So if it's wrong, Dante, that's on you. I used the writing you gave me. I do not speak Japanese. I kind of was strategic in the burning in my process. I thought that it looked kind of cool just to be kind of on the bottoms, like the sword sat there and maybe burnt it, you know? I don't know, that's how my mind works. Once I did all that, I clear coat of lacquer. I did the spray lacquer, in the rattle can. That was really it on the finish. Pretty simple. This was a different project for me. I'd never made one of these before, like I said. So thank you, Dante, for letting me make it for you. I had fun making it. I will say that I was going to include in this video that I gave it to Dante and have some cool videos or pictures of it hung up on his wall, but he is currently, as I'm filming this, on a cruise, which I hope you're having a blast, by the way. This just in, y'all. Looks like there was a turn of events, and I was able to get the finished katana over to Dante's house, hang it up, and put his swords in it for the final pictures. Which is honestly a really good thing because I really needed a thumbnail. My thumbnail I don't think was going to look right if it was just an empty rack and no swords. So this allowed me to put the swords in it and get the full effect of the rack. Thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.